Hi, my name is Arnie Villarreal. Thank you for joining us on A Compton Cop YouTube channel. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit like. And please enjoy the next video we're about to show. Hi, how you doing, guys? Thank you again for joining my YouTube channel at ComptonCop.com. Hope you're doing well. Today's guest is my good old partner that we rode together, had some good times, Paul Mason. And he started a few months before I did. Paul has a lot of stories to say, and the things that he saw through his eyes.
Born in Compton, but made in Compton and raised in Compton.
And when did you start the police force?
1988.
88.
And then through 96.
Through 96.
Less,
yeah.
And I came out of the Air Force. Actually, I was in the military the whole time. I was a regular in the U.S. Air Force, and I had no intentions of becoming a police officer at all, but my dad worked there. When I was a little boy, I knew a few of the guys.
And what was his name?
They called him Red.
They call him Red.
Red Mason.
Right.
I'm Little Red, Paul, Pablo, whatever. My dad asked me to join the Compton Police Force, and I wasn't interested, but there was an incident that happened in '88, early '88, around the time of my birthday, which is in March, and there was a guy named George Aguilar, who was former Compton PD that went over to Inglewood a few years before, and he got killed in the line of duty. I saw George, I don't know, maybe a year before that when I came home on leave. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to encourage me to, just try being a cop. And I was telling him, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to go to school and do other things and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, man, your dad's a good cop. You just try it. And try it for a year and see what happens. And then I was, I don't know, somewhere I got message that George had been assassinated in the line of duty. And I know it was around March because it was around my birthday.
Right, okay.
And, so that's kind of the reason, like the tipping point that kind of made me want to try it. And I still, I applied at other jobs too. I really didn't care if I made it or not.
We had to, huh? I mean, I remember I tried with LSO a couple times, LAPD, Compton twice, and that's on the other YouTube recording that I made. And you came on to Compton PD, and who was your first training officer, man? Do you remember? Well, I don't know if we want to say, but what was the first name? I remember you rode with him a couple, and
well, his initials were, they called him Mac.
Mac, yeah.
But his initials were Steve McMorris.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve.
He was funny. He was a funny guy.
Yeah.
I had him for about 2 or 3 months, and then there was another officer named Pete. We'll call him Pete R. People there, Pete, his last name R, and had him for 2 or 3 months, and then they released me on day shift, so I was there for probably 6 months, I think.
6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get the full 12-month training.
No.
I didn't.
I got about 6 months with two TOs? Two TOs, and then I got released for about 6 months on day shift, and then they put me on swing shift, and basically I was on swing shift my entire career.
Yeah. Like you, I don't know if you did. I didn't. I didn't even have a ride along with my lieutenant, to clear me. Did you?
I don't remember.
No, man. I didn't. And I know a lot of guys did. Where they would ride with the lieutenant and they'd get the approval, and go, okay, man, you're cut loose, But no, not here.
It kind of reminds me of something though, but like when I started there, I was hired by Chief Webb, Ivory Webb. And
yeah, both of us.
He was, I think he was a good chief. I mean, when I had my chief's interview, all he talked about was he was very polite, nice
very
guy.
proud.
And
You're a Compton cop.
Yeah, but he was like, he had some vision. You know,
Right.
He was like, look, we have about 100 cops here total, and we need about 225.
Right.
And he's like, that was his goal, and he's the one who brought in the, you know, like the helicopters, the special assignments,
Motors.
He added more motors, or restarted the motor.
Dogs.
All the
Canine,
special assignments. He was progressive, and of course, Compton, for some reason, or some unexplained reason, they let him go.
They did.
And it didn't make any sense, and that was something I didn't like at all. And then
And we were young. I mean, we were, how old when they let him, how many years were we there when?
I was there about
not even a couple years.
I was there about a year. I can't remember, but I worked under him, Ivory Webb, and then there was Chief Ebert, and then Carrington. And then I can't recall the last guy's name.
Yeah. We'll get into that and more to come, and we'll really it'll get juicy.
Yeah. Knowing what I know now, I think they had, like the academy I went to. Compton didn't go to the sheriff's academy. They used to when my father went through. He went through the sheriff's academy.
Yeah, mine too.
But by the time we got there, it was in Whittier, like Rio Hondo Police Academy.
Right.
And they had this thing like kids, like if you took a test and you made a few mistakes, they had something called remediation, I think, which was like re-education camp. You had to go in there and clear up your mistakes, but I think they should have taken that a little further and make people test out of each subject orally. That's the way I would do it.
Getting prepared to testify, in court, man,
So like I said, my first job was in the military, and I actually did communications, which was like encrypting messages and things like that. And we had to test out everything.
Don't sugarcoat it, man. You did some heavy stuff, man. So I just want to tell you, behind the scenes, Paul was, an individual of clandestine, for us in America, watching things that, you really.
I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, long story short, we had to test out. So that was kind of like my template when I got to Compton. And Compton, it needed some help. But Ivory Webb was, when he hired me, and
it was on a go, man.
Yeah,
things were moving. It was fun to see wow, man. Oh, we got more cops coming in.
Yeah, it was a major mistake getting rid of Ivory Webb.
Yeah,
I think so.
No, and I want to let you in on something too, Paul. Is that when they got rid of him? I don't know if you know, man, but I was the last one on the totem pole for close to 2 years.
Yeah.
They didn't hire nobody after that, man.
Because
and I was afraid then I was going to lose my job.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this into bash Compton PD, but most of the guys worked there. They were great guys.
Yeah.
But the organization needed to be improved, like Ivory Webb. That was his vision. He explained it to us thoroughly when we got hired.
Yeah, he did.
And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, this is going to be good in 5 years or so. And we got the right chief at the right time. And then when they let him go, it didn't make any sense. And that that proved to be an omen for me anyway.
No, you see the movement in there of people jockeying for position, and the
wrong people. They replaced him with the wrong people, except for like people like like I said, Ebert wasn't there very long. He came. He had some issues, and
Ebert was
they got rid of
commander
him
when we got there.
Yeah, and he was actually a nice guy. I thought he was a nice guy, but he had an issue, and they got rid of him. And I thought that was a good. If the allegations were true, that was a good thing.
Right.
I don't need to bring that up. And then they brought in another real chief temporarily.
Yeah.
Who was actually a former chief that they brought in for like. As an interim chief, and that was Carrington. He was a straight shooter. I really liked him as well. And then, but he was only temporarily, and then they hired the last chief I worked under.
Right.
He was.
It was.
Yeah.
He
that
was. He was a toughie, man.
No, he didn't. In my opinion, didn't have leadership.
No, I agree
skills.
with you. Yeah, man. It was tough, you know. As we see now, you know, even back then, I think you know, sometimes we just shake our head, man, like, what the hell is going on here, you know? And now we see it, and now we really shake our head like, we can't believe it, you know? It was tough.
It was good times, man. But
we had good times, man. Like,
they didn't have the right people in there for enough time to get it fixed. You know,
no.
So.
And it all has to do, too, with the government of the city.
Yeah.
The government that ran the cities. I mean, our city, like when we were there, Walter Tucker was the father, was the mayor.
Yeah.
Then it went to his son,
All right.
you know, Junior. And then we had another guy in there that, you know, was just, hey, man, a lot of just craziness. What was your funniest time, man, in the academy or being in the street, man? You know, well,
I mean, there's a lot of characters in the city. We had a lot of characters that I worked with. Most of the people I got along with perfectly. There was a couple of.
Who was there? I mean, you can name first names, you know, and.
What, in the street or at the police department?
The police department. And if you want to get in the street too, man, you know. See, I can't remember a lot of them, man.
I do.
Okay.
I remember. Yeah. I mean, like, there was a guy we called Junior. They used to hang out at Alameda and Compton Boulevard with dimes in his ears.
Yeah.
And he was a really smart guy. I was
Look
told.
up.
He would say,
Look up.
yeah, that's right. He would always say, look up, look up.
Look up.
But it turned out, I think I spoke to one of his daughters once, and he used to be like an exceptional architect downtown LA.
No way.
Yeah, he's designed a lot of those buildings. So people used to make fun of him. But the guy was really a smart guy, and he never bothered anybody, but he was one of my favorite characters. He was just a guy that, you know, just walked around the streets and, like you said, look up. He was one of my favorites. And then there was another guy named Dwayne Harper, and he would flag me down and tell me, hey, Mason, I need to make a little extra money here. And so I want you to take me in 5150. And I say, oh, I can't do that, Dwayne. And he was like, yes, you can. I hear voices.
He already knew, huh? 5150.
He would fill out the form by himself. I'd let him fill them out, and he was one of my favorites. And there was a lot of guys, and there was some, you know, even some of the gangsters in. Well,
you got to tell that one story about remember Chata?
Oh, Chata.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
she
Chata was one. I'll come back to her.
Okay.
But Chata, and there was a lot of. Believe it or not, I wasn't surprised when a lot of the Compton gangs during that era spread all the way across the United States, because I met a lot of guys that were smart. I mean, I could say, man, this guy he could go into the corporate world easily and make a lot of money.
Or he can go into the government world, you know, the Marines, the Air Force, Navy, and
CIA,
really,
all that stuff.
Tear it up, man.
Yeah, man.
They
were successful businessmen. They just, you know, they were doing it in an environment they knew. But I met a lot of guys like that. And then there was a couple knuckleheads and stone cold killers too.
Oh yeah.
But
you know,
but a lot of them were very, very smart. And I would meet guys that were 14, 15 years old that were like mathematical geniuses and do things.
Well, they were slinging, man, and they had to keep their baggies of rocks of what intact with the money that they had in their pocket. What they had to give up. So they were really watching him. They could run a business. That's what it was.
Easily.
It was a business for them, man.
Easily run a business. There were individual gangs too that I felt like certain gangs had like a personality, and
yeah,
come to that later.
Some Bloods there, and then some Crip gang there. I don't say their names because I don't want to give them any props, but I don't, if you want to.
Oh, you could say thing, maybe they're the gang they came from, but like, when you were working narcotics, I was working.
You were working gangs,
right?
Right.
And
with Eduardo.
Yeah, it was me, Eddie, and then some people know about Tim and Lad, and it was us four for a couple years there. But that era, there was a lot. So it was so busy. One, because that was when rock sales were at their peak. They were bringing guns into the city.
How many calls for service just one typical unit would have one night, man? On PM shift.
Oh, probably average 15 or 20, unless you caught a homicide.
Yeah, unless you caught a homicide and that you were gonna get one that week.
Oh, yeah.
You knew it, Or you and I handled some gunshot victims. I remember you and I had a gunshot victim at Long Beach and Alondra at a liquor store, and it turned out to be a homicide. And we had to be out there. Paul was writing the report. I was getting some witness information, and we got hungry. And Domino's was right next door, so we ordered a Domino's pizza and we put it on the hood. And our sergeant came out, and he was pretty livid, man. He said, "Motherfucker, they could be filming us right there, and you guys eating pizza out here, if there's a dead body." We're hungry, man. We haven't eaten all day. It was just things like that, But and you're gonna make a dope arrest tonight, either cocaine or PCP,
Yeah, but, it wasn't hard to get a dope. Of course, we had police officers there that were pretty amazing. Some of them would come back with 4 guys within 20 minutes, and each of them would have one rock. I'll get to that later. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good, and that's not a joke. Okay, yeah, but in general, you could go out and hit.
Well, you were good with Rolling Stolens and some guns. You always, were good with that.
For me, getting back to what was fun, I like the pursuits, and they one guy I remember too, man. He was from Santana Block.
Oh yeah.
He used to always get in pursuits, and he would get away, and I grew up with hot rods and stuff, so to me that was just racing, But
Paul can drive. If watching this guy, yeah, man. You just sat. You weren't going to wreck. This guy can handle a car, man. It was a trip.
I would chase him to the end of the thing, but there was this one guy, and his name was Juan. That's all I'll say. And there was one lieutenant we had, Lieutenant Wallace, that would
W. Wallace. That guy.
Oh, but Juan he would always know where Juan was coming in, and he would get behind him, and Juan used to drive this like 5.0, like one of those old Mustang 5.0s.
The square body.
But Juan could drive, which I appreciate that kind of. For me, that's fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like most of the guys. You get in pursuit, and the police get behind them, they'd wreck within. But Lieutenant Wallace used to always chase this guy, and he would always get away. But Lieutenant Wallace would chase him for a good 10 or 15 minutes, and I used to say, "Hey, Juan, you ain't getting away from me, man." But I didn't like cutting in, so.
And Wallace was a Chippy officer before he came back.
That makes sense, yeah.
He came back to Compton.
That makes sense.
Compton and Chippy, and they came back to Compton,
Yeah, but
good guy.
I liked because like that's what I was saying. There was guys like Juan. I could tell. I was like, this guy could be a race car driver.
Yeah.
Easily.
Easy.
I mean, like he was just a natural driver. I mean, he was just. I mean, and that guy, you could have put him in NASCAR or give him a little training in a Formula car, and the guy would have been great. And he was another good businessman. You know, that's all I'm gonna say about it, because the guy, he passed away. But I mean, it's just guys like that I remember, because I used to tell him, he was like, "You ain't gonna catch me," and I'm like, "If I get
It's
behind
coming,
you,
man.
you ain't getting away, man." And I actually got behind him finally. And he took off on me. He didn't get away.
I don't know if you remember, we were riding together, and our cars were falling apart, man. Mm-hmm. They were just. So one time, Paul and I had a call, went handle it, got back into the car. Remember, it wouldn't start, man. Wow. So we called for a tow. On the next block over, we were on Wilmington in about just north of Rosecrans. We're sitting there, we're waiting for the tow to give us a jump or something. We hear gunshots, man, on the next street over. You remember that, Paul? Boom, 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 boom. Just this house is getting lit up. It was on the other block. So Paul and I get out of our car, police unit, man. We got our guns drawn. What the hell is going on here? And then all of a sudden, this guy with an AK-47, he runs right in front of the police car, right in front of us. And then he looks, and he takes off down like 130th or, you know, one of those streets. He crosses Wilmington into those streets. Paul gives chase to him. Paul's fast. Paul was fast back then, you know. And I'm putting it out over the radio. My partner's in foot pursuit. He's westbound, you know, 130 something. You know, you can hear the units coming around. And man, I was running. Well, I'm a fat boy, you know, so I couldn't keep up. But Paul followed him into this house, and you know, these guys were smart, man. They try to get away. We followed him to the house. We go into the house, and he already changed his clothes, and he was in bed, laying in bed, man. And Paul, get out of here! He dumped the AK-47 in the front yard. You know, we recovered that. And the funny thing is that he didn't even live in the house. That was, you know, I don't know if you remember that. Paul goes,
"Oh man, I'm getting
you don't
old.
even live here," you know. And people were shocked. They were in the living room, and they were, who is this guy? Didn't even know him, you know. And he changed his clothes, man, grabbed whatever you can grab in there, and got in bed and pretend, "Oh, I was asleep all night."
Yeah.
No, you weren't, man. You know, but you know, Paul hunted him down, and I was out of breath, man. Thank God the other units turned down the street, and they were right behind him.
Make a public service announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arnie just reminded me something. To the ex or former Compton police officers, dispatchers, clerk, anyone that worked there, you guys should contact Arnie and send him emails, because we need to preserve these stories for many reasons. But the main reason is a lot of these guys are starting, you know, to pass away. We need to preserve certain stories, and like each individual remembers certain things.
Right.
So we need to get pieces put together so we can paint a picture, because, you know, Compton PD is defunct now. The sheriffs run that city, but there's still a lot of Compton police officers out there, and whatever, dispatchers, clerks, jailers, people that were around during that era that know specific pieces of the stories.
Yeah.
And we got to use it like our collective memory, and then hopefully somebody can put all this together and you know, put out a real documentary or to preserve that history, man, because there's a lot of good guys. And, you know, I'm not, you know, I hate to sound like a parrot or repeating, but, you know, we had the good and the bad and the ugly, you know. So I'm not here to self-promote or anything like that, but I do want to preserve the history of, you know, Compton, and that means we got to talk about some of the ugly stuff and some of the bad stuff. But most of it was good stuff with good people. We had a lot of fun. It was like the golden years, we called it. But but if anyone's out there as former Compton PD, you don't have to be a police officer. Just anyone that worked there, you guys contact Arnie on his channel. What's it called again?
Yeah, aComptonCop.com. You can contact me there. Narcos at aComptonCop.com, or go to my YouTube channel.
Yeah, Narcos at
aComptonCop.
aComptonCop.com.
Yes.
Yeah, so don't be afraid, don't be shy.
No.
And I know some people, I've talked to people over the years, some of the old guys and people we work with, there's some old animosities and stuff. We need to get over that. And a lot of it is just confusion and rumors.
Paul clarified some things with me when we met up. And, for years, Paul, and I'll be true, I did hold a lot of animosity towards some people, and my story. I've told you what I wanted to do, and thank God it didn't come into fruition. But now, I guess I'm over it now, and
with the guys, but there's certain people there, because I feel like Compton PD probably would still exist if we would have had the right leaders at that time. If we'd have had the right people in the union, etc., the Compton PD would probably still exist. I mean, it's literally back when I was a little kid, like 3-4 years old. I remember my father saying the sheriffs want to take over. They always wanted Compton. It's their biggest contract to date.
They wanted it, man. Even when my father was there, same thing.
Yeah, but we were holding down that city with a Band-Aid for a long time, with no radios, no cars.
Paul, let them know. We used to have to, we were the rookies, so we had to run upstairs and beat the other guys to a radio. Remember that?
It was horrible, man.
It was horrible, man.
But like I said, going back to Ivory Webb, if Ivory Webb, Chief Webb is out there, I'm giving you, some applause here, because I think if you'd have stayed there another 5 or 10 years, we would have.
I think it would have been different.
Yeah, we would have had the resources, we would have had the money, and the Compton PD would still exist.
That's right, Paul, because when we got there, and then he left, or he was terminated, a few people got demoted. It was just a domino effect. And getting back to what Paul is saying about keeping this unity together, there's people that are reaching out to me now that work with fallen officers' family members, and it's nice. It's good to hear from them, and they're excited to keep the remembrance alive. And for years, I think a lot of people, Arnie VRL didn't care. I did, man, but I was going through some personal animosities too. It took years. I worked there for years. It took years to get over it, and I have no feelings, anger feelings against anybody, man, But I agree with Paul, Let's tell some stories. A round table. I couldn't believe the stories we were talking about the other day, and I should have recorded that as well. But it was, it was good to reconnect.
Yeah, and I hope some of the old staff and jailers and clerks and anyone that had anything to do with Compton PD, and if I ever get a channel started, even some of those gangsters that remember me, you guys can email me, because, I'm not one of those cops that had to look over my shoulder. I'm not, I never did anything wrong to anybody. So I'm not worried about that. So I hope, because we need to paint a true picture of Compton, especially after that ridiculous movie came out like 3-4 years ago. I never saw it, but
I'm with you, bro.
Everybody that saw it said it was such a joke. So we need to get a real straight out of Compton documentary, and that's going to require the whole community, the politicians, all, hopefully people will contact you and other people to get this story going, get it pieced together, clear up the confusion, and then put something out that's coherent. And, you know, everybody get together and we have a real round table. I mean, my wish would be there'd be a real round table,
yes,
you know, like in a year with all the old school guys, and they could tell stories.
And that's what you know, one of my main reasons for starting the YouTube channel is to gather more cops to come around, sit in that chair, sit with us, you know, and go back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of people paint the wrong picture about Compton. You know, I remember working graveyard and going down Poinsettia Avenue from Long Beach, Compton and Long Beach area. That was the most beautiful street I've ever been on. Every lawn was manicured, like, you know, Beverly Hills. It was beautiful, man. You know, and one of the cops, the OG cops that took me down that street, he pointed that out to me. And then I remember seeing a gentleman out there that owned a house, a black guy, and he was watering his lawn, and he waved to us, and he would, you know, he would tell us, yeah, you guys got a hard job out there. Yeah, you know, we do. He said, but you know, Compton's beautiful, man. There's only, you know, I would have to, this is what he said, there's only about 3% of us, or 3% of the community that are a bad community.
Yeah.
And it always stuck in my head.
And it was the same, you know, at the police department.
Right. You got the 3%, man.
And the problem
of the eggs, the bad eggs.
Just like the community, most of the people in Compton, my whole family was there.
Right.
And they were good people, hardworking people. And then, you know, they would like not enjoy the city because there was a few knuckleheads running around that were kind of like dictating what the environment was going to be. And it was the same thing at the police department. And I'm talking about the leadership specifically. And I'm not all this police thing. And just for balance, you know, like there was a lot of command staff that I really respected. Mm-hmm. One that I could remember is like Lieutenant Flores. I think if Lieutenant Flores would have been the chief after, say, like Ivory Webb, we would have been fine because he was a straight shooter and there was no BS. And a lot of people hated him. And I want to bring up a story. This is a true story. So if Lieutenant Flores hears this story, you know, I had a lot of respect for Lieutenant Flores. I thought he was a really good guy, straight shooter, but a lot of people didn't like him for the same reason. And then one time, I heard him ask on the radio for someone to pick him up a salad. It was a busy night. I think I was handling like a triple homicide or something, and in patrol, and that's another thing. The difference at Compton PD is like patrol, we handled our homicides as opposed to the sheriff.
Right, we did everything, man.
Yeah, patrol and sheriff, they put up tape and wait for the detectives. It wasn't like that in Compton.
We started going door to doors.
But yeah, that's a separate story. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and this is kind of an ugly story, but I won't name any names. But anyway, I heard Lieutenant Flores, asked for some lunch because he was busy. And he was answering phones all night, and we were short, and we only had like 8 or 10 guys on a swing shift, and there were shootings everywhere and triple homicide. It was crazy. And then there was a group of officers that didn't like him, and the reason they didn't like him was because he was a balanced guy and he was a straight shooter, and they came up on the wrong side of his stick. So anyway, I happened to go to that burger stand that was at Alameda and Compton. What's the name of that one?
Rosecrans.
No, the one.
Oh, Louis Burgers.
Louis Burgers.
Yeah, Louis Burgers.
So I 1019 for people that don't know what that means. I went to the station, and Lieutenant Flores said, "Hey, Mason, make sure they're getting my salad, and bring it back, because he was hungry." And so anyway, I get over to Louis Burgers, and there was like 3 or 4 cops there, and all 4 of them disliked Lieutenant Flores for unjustified reasons. And they got on the radio and said, "Hey, Lou, we'll pick up a salad for you." So by the time I got over there, they had the salad, mm-hmm. and I'm looking at these guys. And one of them was the ringleader, and I'm not going to bring up his name, but this is how much I respect Lieutenant Flores. They took off. They decided they were gonna spit in his salad.
Oh no.
Yeah, they did.
Oh man.
So, and you know, it's an ugly story, but I'm gonna tell the good and the bad. So, they take off the lid and spit in the salad. And they're like, "Hey Mason, you want to spit in here?" I'm like, "Man, these dudes are clowns." But instead of fighting with them, I just said, "Yeah, I'll take care of it, man, and I'll take it to the lieutenant." And they're like, "Nah." And luckily, they let me take it, so I just got him another salad and got rid of that. But see, we had knuckleheads like that running around, and they would get, what do we call it, butthurt?
Yeah.
They would get butthurt, and they would do things like that because they got disciplined for the right reasons. And that kind of sentiment went all the way to the top. They were just that 3% or whatever you want to call it. There were knuckleheads, and so yeah, I wasn't gonna let that happen.
Good.
I wouldn't
man.
even let that happen to a bad guy. You know?
That's just wrong.
Yeah, that's just wrong. Yeah,
That's
so
just wrong, man. You know, like Paul says, there were some bad times where you just shook your head and you couldn't believe it.
Humans, man. And so
Yeah.
they do silly things. But I'm the type of person. That's probably, and I know that's the reason that my career was cut a little short over there, was because they had certain individuals over there that had power, and some police officers, even though they didn't have power, they would just do ridiculous things that I couldn't believe. And I wasn't going to let that happen to anybody.
Nah.
Including criminals. I mean, I wouldn't let people do that to, like, guys and, abuse criminals and stuff like that. So it's, like, ridiculous. So that caused me a lot of heartache in the end, but, we can get to that another day.
Anguish.
Yeah, I always try to, I was raised in a very, God-fearing family, and I always felt like, I'm going to have to answer to the Almighty one day, and that is, a higher power than anything here, but I wasn't going to let, innocent people go to jail, and, I would often hear some cops say things like, hey, the guy's in F him. I'm like, no, man, you got to catch him, man. It's a cat and mouse
Fair and
game.
square, man.
Just like I was telling you the story, like Juan. I'm like, Juan,
yeah.
I'm going to catch you. But I wasn't going to come up with no BS. I'm like, I got to catch him.
I'm going to catch you.
And I would tell him, I'm going to catch you.
Yeah. That's what.
And I caught him. But for me, it was the joy of the race. That's one thing I remember about that guy. And then Dwayne, it was just him. There was another story about Dwayne. One time, he flagged me down, and he said, "Hey," and I took him over, to get some mental health treatment. And then while we were waiting, he had some kind of injury too, so I had to take him over to the MLK emergency.
Oh yeah, and then take him across the street.
And then he was like, he always told me that he knew how to do heart surgery, and at the time, because of all the the crack wars or whatever. We didn't call it crack, we call it rock. So, but anyway, all that was going on. So the Army, the military had trauma surgeons that worked in
they did, man.
MLK emergency room.
Yeah.
And then one day, I brought Dwayne over there, and he had to get treatment. And then I said, Dwayne always told me he could do heart surgery and all this stuff. And so one of the trauma surgeons came by, and I said, this guy says sir, this guy claims he can do heart surgery. And then he said, okay, let me hear it. And Dwayne started going through the procedures, everything in detail. And that trauma surgeon listened to him for about 20 minutes, and he goes, you know what? He's 100% correct.
Holy cow.
From start to finish. And I was like, really? He goes, no, I'm not, no BS. I was like, Dwayne. It's like, I tried to tell you. And I'm like, so everyone thought Dwayne was just this crazy guy.
I did. I always thought.
Yeah, he had mental health problems, but he was a really smart guy. So, and I'll never forget that. That's one of the, stories I remember in Compton that stands out in my mind. There was like this lieutenant colonel trauma surgeon saying he's 100% correct.
Dang,
if I was teaching a class, he would get an A+. Who's one of your favorite characters over there?
In the street, man?
Yeah. Or even favorite gang or whatever.
Oh man, we had so many names for them. But there was the Paragons out there. Remember that?
Yeah.
Compton Valley Tortilla Flats. We used to make. Oh man, the 7-0s, the 155s, and Palmer Black. Was it Palmer Black that wrote up all the names on the wall that they wanted the EOWS, man?
Busy.
Yeah, they were busy, man. And Fruit Town, Treetops. You had some, like I tell guys always ask me, do you remember their names and stuff like that? Paul, I didn't. You were a gang guy.
Yeah,
I was narco guy.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to remember their names, man. I think, I was like, I just want to throw you in jail, man. That's it.
Well, actually, I went around for like more than a year taking pictures and
did,
creating
man.
a database for the county, which I'm told by the guys that work sheriff now that they still use it.
Yeah, I have to attest to that. Paul, we were in the same. Well, he was in narco, and I was in narcos, and he was in gangs. But I would see guys, he'd go get the jail van, pick them up.
The ice cream truck.
The ice cream truck, the Twinkie truck, man. Yeah. And he would load them all up in there. You're coming to the station. You're coming to the station. We got to FI you. We don't know who you are. I don't know who you are. You got to come down. And man, we went through how many Polaroids, man? You wouldn't even come down to Narcos. I need some more Polaroid, man. All right, there's a whole drawer, man.
And back then, everything was filmed.
Yeah,
it was all digital.
Polaroid, man. And right.
Well, the Polaroid ones we would keep like for you guys to have quick.
Yeah,
reference.
we had them in the.
But I had a camera too, like a Canon or Sony that used film, and I probably went through.
A 35 millimeter.
1,000 of those film cameras, me and Aguilar. So that took at least a year. We were just creating a database, and that thing proved to be vital in a lot of cases, especially for outside agencies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we always had people calling us, man.
Who's this guy?
Created the GREAT system. That's what it was. Remember?
What's it called?
The GREAT system. Gang, yada yada, intelligence, something like that, man.
Yeah.
But what's her name?
And I want to give credit. I think her name was Muriel. I took the pictures and did the FI cards.
Yeah, the FI cards.
But she was the one actually
inputting everything.
Yeah, so she deserves
a black
least
lady,
50%
beautiful black lady, man. Beautiful black hair. This gal was top notch, man. Joanna took over for her.
Yeah, Joanna.
When she retired and worked down there. And
she's a hard worker.
Yeah, man.
They are. A lot of those. I actually, for the record, think that was the best out of Compton PD. The most well-run part of that was probably the clerks. They had their stuff together.
Oh, don't get caught back there and making yourself a copy of a report.
No, they had their stuff together, man.
You
and they didn't have
back there.
Top-notch reresources either, but they were always
worked with it, man.
TikTok. They would retype reports. For people that couldn't spell and stuff like that, But I think that was the out of the whole police department. I thought they were always on top of their game.
Yeah,
so for people like Joanna, Muriel, and all the staff,
clerks back there, working.
I thought they were good.
Yeah, man. I can't. Get in touch with me. Tell me your name again. And we'll get in contact with each other. Hey, even dispatch, we had some great dispatchers in there, man, that took care of us, and we took care of them too. When they would call, can you call 1021 me? We were 1020. Can you bring me
They
some
had
tacos?
to be good, man, because they were shorthanded and they had to call out calls. And
I didn't want to get caught in there working the switchboard or whatever. What do you call that?
One of them was really good, man. I can't. Sydney, man, when the stuff hit the fan, Sydney was good.
Yeah.
Betty.
Yeah, Betty.
And they were all good, but I remember they were like really, like when I was out there by myself, and they were on top of their game.
Yeah, man.
So shout out to the dispatchers too.
Yes, God, what was her name, man? Ada.
Ada Palafoss. He was really good. Yeah. I'm just getting old. It's hard for me to remember everyone's name. I'm not excluding people. I just can't. I can only remember so many names and so many That's why we need people to get together. And I think Compton, we should write our own story. The people that worked there, that was in the middle of it, the people that lost their life in the line of duties and their families. Those people went through a lot of suffering, you know, the Burrells and
the McDonald's,
you know, tell their little piece of the story.
And that'll come soon, you know. It's we're gonna lay all that down.
Yeah.
Paul has some excellent stories about, you know, how we tracked down that idiot. You know, we don't say his name, who killed, murdered our two partners, and how we were all involved. And it was he'll get into that.
I rode with Jimmy one time, maybe twice, but I ran with him and we got in a foot pursuit off of Rosecrans and Willowbrook. And anyway, we chased this guy for like a couple blocks.
Yeah.
And the officers start showing up and Jimmy was like right behind me. But Jimmy was like a stocky, short guy, right? And then when it was all over, the point was, they were like, man, some of the officers like, that white boy was right behind you. And I said, yeah, he was. I was like, it ain't got nothing to do with his color. I said, yeah, he was right behind me. And then I found out later that he was like this all-star quarterback in Roseburg.
No, Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa, there you go. Santa Rosa, California High School. And I was like, okay, now it makes sense because, you know, you can't judge a Brook Pride corner. I mean, Jimmy was like right behind me. I mean,
and he did all the right things when he started out with us.
Great guy, yeah.
He just didn't come in and say, "Hey, I'm Mr. Know-It-All." No, man, the guy was, you know, and him and Mark.
Yeah, Mark was his buddy.
Yeah, man, and
we've been invaded by moths here. We're in a peaceful thing, but it's okay.
And we're out here in the country at my house.
I want to hear the story about Compton PD. That's all. And yeah, Jimmy, he is a great guy. Came from a great family. I got to meet all his family and friends, and
shout out to his mother, Tony, who's still out there. He received emails and
Miss Burrell.
Yeah, Miss Burrell.
Going the whole family. Yeah, they're strong people, man. Much stronger than I am. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's. Oh man! But before we do any type of remembrance of them, we want to make contact with them first to let them know Paul is going to do that, so that because he's got a good intel with them. To but it's going to be nice. It's we don't want to just blindside them and then it rebirths everything again.
Like a Picasso.
So Carl, you got to get involved with us. We met last week in George and Wilk.
There's a lot of reserves. I remember reserves like Bruce White,
Lionel. Remember Lionel? He still live in Compton, man. The big one.
Yeah, was
big guy. Huh? No, he was a reserve with us. He worked for Hughes. He was a smart man, this guy.
That guy Hubbard.
Oh yeah,
the doctor.
He was there.
Who was
Lionel brought him?
The little Latino
Little Gomez.
Guy. No, he was like the oldest. He was like the real OG out of the whole.
Frank, my buddy Frank.
Frank Garces.
Frank Garces.
He was a good guy.
Tipping my hat off to him. He passed away.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Love that man. There's some stories about him too. And Frank Garces was, one of the oldest reserves there. I think he was the oldest reserve there at Compton. And
he was a good guy.
Good guy, man.
He was old school. He carried that big, I don't know what it was.
The swivel holster.
Yeah, but it was like a 357.
It was bigger than him, man.
Yeah, but that thing was dangerous, man. That was a big gun. What was it, a 357 or a 44 Magnum? It was a big gun. I think
it was a 44, man.
Handgun.
Yeah.
And he'd pull that thing out. It looked like one of those guns that would shoot out the flag bazooka. But it was real, So.
Yeah, he was good, man. He worked cold enforcement there for years until he retired out.
Oh, yeah.
His wife was a nurse at MLK.
What other reserves were there?
Anoye. Daryl.
I remember him. And I one guy I remember was Thundercloud.
Oh yeah,
He was,
Sean Logan was his brother-in-law, I believe, man.
Yeah, he was a Native American guy, and he was like this. The guy had like exceptional talent as a
Artist.
Yeah. So.
He drew out our, when we do reverse stings. You've been stung by the Narcos bumblebee or something like that. I gotta find that thing, man. Really good guy.
I got Thundercloud. I can't remember all of their names, but we had some really good reserves, and if they were bad, we just like if the detective was bad, we call them defectives. And some of the reserves we call reverses.
Reverses.
Yeah, so we had that kind of fun. It was like all in good fun, but
yeah. I think we got a lot down today, Paul. We're gonna do this again, and hopefully we can get together weekly or bi-weekly. This time we'll meet halfway. Paul had to drive out, quite a ways, and but I wanted him here, and we can get together now. We'll get a round table going.
Put out your email again.
Remember, get in touch with me. It'll be at the end of the video. Narcos@acomptoncop.com. Also visit my website, acomptoncop.com, and you'll see some Compton PD attire on there. If you need a beanie, you need a sweater, you need a shirt. Hey, man, help a brother out.
Yeah.
But God bless you guys. I thank Paul. Brother.
And one more PSA.
Much,
Don't be afraid to email them, and the other people, like the dispatchers and anyone that worked, please email them. And if, like I said, if there's some animosities or confusion, try to let that go, or start your own channel. We just need to get this documented, and then eventually, I'd like us to put together a real straight out of Compton factual documentary or something like that.
It needs to be done,
because the department, the people, there was hundreds of people that worked there for decades, and most of them were great guys, great cops.
Yes.
And we just had a city that had limited resources. There was, we had police officers, exceptional police officers, I think, that did the best they could with limited resources.
That we had,
Same thing with the dispatchers and the clerks. So it ain't like the poor police officers. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, as a collective, as an organization, we should be able to get. And I would just suggest, if you don't want to call Arnie, you can email me or anyone else, or start your own channel, and eventually we'll get all this down, and you could talk to someone that you don't have animosity with. Just get the information down is what I'm trying to say before it's too late.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. Yeah.
And again, like I always leave you with, we only have one shepherd, John 10:16, and look towards him. Remember, push a chair in after you eat at a restaurant or at home. Be nice, start off small. And the second thing is, use your darn turn signal when you're gonna turn. All right? Be respectful out there. Love you all, and we'll talk to you soon.
I didn't hear any, but I had gentlemen flag me down.
10-4, I just wanted to know if you should be back 76 to Cabana Circle or